Let me do a little bit of opening. ASEAN is the longest and the strongest trading bloc in the world. It is a living trading agreement that manages global trade and investment area and agenda in technology, sustainable and inclusive growth. In 2022, it became part of the largest global trading area called RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is driven by ASEAN and ASEAN centrality, with 5 non-ASEAN members of China, Japan, Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. Currently, it's pursuing FTA with EU, UK, and Canada. The strength of ASEAN is geoeconomics that allows the diversity of ASEAN member states to be coordinated for collective and regional growth and integration in a market and in a rule-based regional integration. It seeks shared vision and shared prosperity for ASEAN member states. For example, the ASEAN Economic Community 2030 vision is a good example. Now we're working on ASEAN 2050 vision for more collective, more prospered ASEAN and East Asia. In this framework, ASEAN manages the geopolitics in its own way, called the ASEAN way of non-intervention. And that non-intervention has helped us to propel the regional integration to a very high level of stable and the longest and strongest trading area in the world. Again, the geopolitics is managed in a collective and a rule-based integration framework in terms of international institutions' agenda. So ASEAN don't set its own geopolitical agenda. It is driven, and any issues that arises, we use the international trading and international institutions to resolve and manage the geopolitics itself. But recently, the geopolitics has increased in ASEAN in terms of Myanmar conflicts and also the South China Sea issues. The recent climate change and environmental issues are also increasing the geopolitics in the region. The recent geopolitics also accelerated with the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, initiated by Japan and Australia, and further supported by US and Europe with its own Indo-Pacific Economic Framework agenda. Geopolitics creates greater self-interest and less coordination between the member states, and directly affects the ASEAN centrality and the rule-based trading framework of the regional integration. So this title we have chosen of geopolitics and geoeconomics is so fundamental for ASEAN and also for Malaysia and other ASEAN members. So I'm looking forward to the interesting presentation by global leaders, thought leaders from Oxford and from on today's discussion. They'll be very critical develop pathways for ASEAN for deeper integration in a more sustainable and inclusive manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Chandra, for your opening remarks. Now, please join me in welcoming Professor Dato Elizabeth Lee, the Group CEO of Sunway Education and the Director of ASLI's Board of Directors, to the stage to deliver her welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much, Xiao Yu, and also thank you very much, Prof. Chandra. Prof. Chandra is, of course, our Director of the Jeffrey Chia Institute on Southeast Asia. So good afternoon, everyone. Very distinguished guests that we have amongst us today. Thank you very much for coming to listen to our very esteemed panel who have come all the way from Oxford, including Dato' Prof. Afifi himself, also flew in from Oxford, together with his 2 friends who are experts and head the Oxford School of Global and Area Studies, and also the head of Social Sciences Division. So Professor Timothy Power and Professor Paul Chasty. And of course, the lone lady of us all on the panel, Professor Evelyn Davis-Dawson from the Faculty of Business and Economics at the University of Malaya. Why I say that? I'm very, very pleased to have especially Professor Devadasan here with us, because I spoke to no less than 10 different ladies to join this power panel of men, also known as a manel otherwise. And I'm so glad that Professor Evelyn came to join, and will equalize the field a little bit. So 1 woman, 3 men, because actually 4 men. Can I add Professor Ye as well into the mix? So that doesn't make it very much easier. Professor Ye, of course, is our director of the Economic Studies at the Jeffrey Chia Institute on Southeast Asia. So together with Mr. Daniel Rahman, our CEO of ASLI, and Prof. Chandra, we are all very pleased to welcome you all with us. With me also is Professor Popima, who is our president of Sunway University, and also Prof. Abi Vera Kumarasivam, the provost. So welcome to Rising Tides, the Geopolitics and Geoeconomics of Malaysia and ASEAN. Today's forum, as the title suggests, is dedicated to exploring the intricate interplay of geopolitics and geoeconomics within Malaysia and the broader ASEAN region. I would, as I said, like to thank our esteemed experts all the way from the University of Oxford. We at Sunway, of course, have had a close relationship with Oxford, close to 10 years now, actually. I believe, if I can remember correctly, since the end of 2014, where we first started on an academic and cultural project collaboration between the Jeffrey Chia Foundation and Oxford University with the 4th Southeast Asian Studies Symposium in 2015. And it was held actually at the University of Oxford for the first time away from Southeast Asia. And since then, we have had academic collaborations with Brasenose College, of which our founder and chairman, Tan Sri Jeffrey Chia, is an honorary fellow since the late 2015, which allows for a two-way flow of scholars between our 2 universities. Ladies and gentlemen, in today's fast-paced world of international relations, we cannot deny the connection between geopolitics and geoeconomics. Whether through strategic partnerships or economic strategies, every decision made affects the intricate web of global affairs. Our esteemed panelists will explore these dynamics together with the underlying drivers of regional collaboration, rivalry, as well as the constant shifts in geopolitical landscapes which shape our world today. And through the valuable discussions and insights shared by our distinguished panel, let us strive for a deeper comprehension of the current challenges and a clearer vision of future opportunities. While I believe the journey ahead of Malaysia, or rather, well, the journey ahead for Malaysia and our ASEAN counterparts is fraught with complexities, I believe there are indeed possibilities. I am sure our panelists will help enlighten us. After the forum, I encourage you to engage with our experts. Do ask questions as hard as possible. After all, they are all from Oxford. It is only through collective dialogue that we can forge a path towards a brighter and more prosperous future for Malaysia, ASEAN, and the world at large. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us hear what our esteemed speakers have to share today. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Dato Elizabeth Lee, for your welcoming remarks. We will now move on to the main session of our event, the panel session on rising tides, geopolitics, and geoeconomics in a global context. Let us welcome our esteemed panelists to the stage. First, we have Professor Timothy Power, the head of Social Sciences Division at the University of Oxford. Dato Dr. Afifi Al-Ikuti, Kuwait Fellow in Islamic Studies, Faculty of Theology and Religion, University of Oxford. Professor Paul Chasty, Head of the Oxford School of Global and Area Studies, University of Oxford. And last but not least, Professor Evelyn Devadasan, Professor at the Faculty of Business and Economics, University of Malaya. And last but not least, the session will be moderated by Professor Ye Kim Ling, the Director of Economic Studies at the Jeffrey Chia Institute on Southeast Asia. I will now pass the floor to Professor Ye.
Good evening, and a very warm welcome, everyone, to our event today. I'm very honored to moderate this discussion with our esteemed panelists. And today's topic, rising tides, of course, has two meanings. One is literal, in the sense that we are seeing our oceans, the level rising and all that. That's in the literal sense, that is the impact of climate change on our rising coastlines. And also, on the other hand, we can use the term rising tides figuratively, in that the world's temperature in all spheres of human activities are rising. Whether it's in terms of transition, geopolitical transition from a unipolar to a multipolar world, or transition from supply chain transition in the aftermath of this US-China decoupling and de-risking, and what would be the kind of global economic system that we face in the future. And also we have the climate challenge of a clean energy transition. That's a third transition that we are facing. And of course, the fourth and important transition is our digital transition. So all these are challenges that our distinguished panel will help to shed light on from the different perspectives, from geopolitical as well as geoeconomic challenges facing different regions in the world. We will go on a journey moving from the west to the east, from Brazil and Americas to Europe and the Middle East and Africa, and then to Russia and North Asia, and then finally we'll come back to Southeast Asia and the Pacific. So allow me to introduce our four distinguished speakers. Professor Tim Power. He is the Professor of Latin American Politics and Head of Social Sciences Division, reporting to the Vice Chancellor and providing leadership for 15 departments and 1,200 academics in social sciences. And I was told that it's the world's top social science faculty. Is that true? So that's #1 social science. Tim arrived in Oxford in 2005 to take up the joint appointment in area studies and Department of Politics. From 2008 to 2012, he directed the Latin American Center and became head of Oxford School of Global and Area Studies in 2018. Tim's research concerns democratization and political institutions in modern Latin America, especially Brazil. He also co-directs the Brazilian Legislative Surveys with Cesar Zucco, and together they have recorded the opinions of Brazilian politicians in every parliament elected since 1990. That's quite a record to have, monitoring all their opinions. So Tim has been working with several colleagues on challenges of coalition government in presidential elections. Of course, we also have a coalition, so some of your insights will be helpful to Malaysians as well. Our second speaker is Dr. Afifi. So he's the Kuwait Fellow at the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies and lectures at the Faculty of Theology, Oxford University's oldest faculty. He is the first ever Malaysian to be appointed to such a position in this world-famous university. He is also a fellow of Worcester College, Oxford, where he is an expert of both Islam and Christianity. From 2018 to 2020, Dato' Afifi was appointed by the Conference of Rulers in Malaysia as Deputy Chairman to the High-Level Panel on Federal Administration of Islam, a royal commission looking into the institutional reforms of the Islamic religious establishment at the federal level. It's a very high level appointment. Since 2010, Dato' Afifi has been listed in the Muslim 500, the world's 500 most influential Muslims. Congrats, Dato'. Our third speaker, Professor Paul Chesty, is Professor of Russian and East European Politics and Head of Oxford School of Global and Area Studies. His research interests cover legislative, party and interest group politics in post-communist Russia, political attitudes in Russia, nationalism in Russia and Ukraine, and comparative presidentialism. His current book project is entitled Consolidation and Contestation, How Russians Understand the New Russia. So we have a lot of questions directed to him in a current ongoing conflict. So I'm sure some of you watch YouTube. There's a live every 2 hours update on battle on the ground. So it's fantastic in terms of the tragedy that we are going through. Our fourth and final speaker, Professor Evelyn Dessen. She is professor in the Faculty of Business and Economics at the University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, specializing in international trade and regional integration. She has previously served as head of the Center for Latin American Studies, as well as Deputy Dean for Research and Development in the Faculty of Economics and Administration. Evelyn earned her PhD in Economics from University of Malaya in 2006 and a Master of Social Sciences in Economics from National University of Singapore in 1992. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our panel discussion today with each speaker presenting their insights, what we call the lead-in thoughts. Each will have about 10 minutes to share their perspective and views, and then I will proceed to ask a few questions to each one, and then after that we can open the floor to the audience. So do get your questions ready when you're listening to their the exposition. So hopefully the session will be free-flowing. Speakers are welcome to interject, and then of course ask questions. The key here is for us to have a lively conversation. So with that, let me invite Professor Timothy Power to share his perspectives and thoughts.
Thank you, Prof. Ye. Is this working? No? We should change. Yeah. This is better. Yeah, thank you. So thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for all the senior leaders of the university and the foundation who are here to roll out the red carpet for us. We feel very honored by the presence of all of you. It's nice to have the president and the provost join us. And Prof. Chandra and his team at JCI have been fantastic. As you may have heard, we are in the process of creating an Institute for ASEAN Studies at the University of Oxford over the next couple of years. And the experience of Sunway and JCI will be extremely useful and informative to us. We have a lot to learn from this university in its pan-regional focus and its proximity to important policy debates in this part of the world. So thank you very much again. I'm going to speak fast because I'm American. Speaking of diversity in Manels, I have a different problem in Oxford. When we have the senior leadership of the university, there are 12 people in the room, and I'm the only non-British person. There are 10 English people and 1 Scot, and then myself. But so let me jump right into it. In terms of geopolitics changes because countries change internally, right? So there's a wise American politician, Tip O'Neill, once said, "All politics is local." So I would also say all geopolitics is local as well. Everything begins internally, and that's why I want to take a few minutes to focus on elections. Something special about 2024 is that this is the year in human history where more people will cast ballots than in any previous year of the planet. There will be elections in 64 countries this year, plus elections to the European Parliament, which is 27 countries will vote there. And this is about exactly half of the world's population casting ballots. It doesn't mean that all the ballots are meaningful, as the election in Russia over the weekend would suggest, but the processes are still worth talking about. Some examples have already happened in the short time we've had in the year. The year is, 11 weeks old, and we've had elections in Indonesia, Pakistan, Russia, Taiwan, Portugal, and many are yet to come. India very soon, the EU in May and June, the USA, my home country, which I'll come back to, Mexico, and the UK. There's a 95% chance that we'll have an election in the fall. South Korea and South Africa, many others that I can't list, but that's a good chunk of the world's population right there. There are many ways to classify these elections. We could think of national elections versus supranational elections, and your university president may vote in 2 of those. We might classify them by presidential, parliamentary, by constitutional type, because they operate differently. They could be classified by world region. But I think the easiest way to approach them is to think about the political environment in which they occur. So you can think of change elections and continuity elections, right? So what is the context in which the election process begins? A continuity election is one in which there is widespread sort of satisfaction with an incumbent government or with the designated successor of that incumbent government, which is the case in Indonesia this year, for example. The president was term limited after 10 years, but his successor won the election. Mexico is another case that will be like this later this year. The next president of Mexico is likely to be Claudia Sheinbaum, who's a minister in the current government, and she will be the first woman and the first Jewish person to lead Mexico, probably elected in June. India, the re-election of Modi is considered well foreseen. Change elections are quite different. Change election doesn't necessarily mean that the opposition can win. 1992 was a change election in the UK, and somehow the Conservative Party was able to hang on to in that election, but the climate was still a change election. This is an election with widespread dissatisfaction, perhaps voter fatigue, and probably just a bit of a political business cycle in which there's a tired incumbent or incumbent party that has been in power for a long time. The UK is a great example because in the UK we have very long political cycles. So from 1979 to 1997, you had one party, the Tories, 18 years. From 97 to 2010, you had the Labour governments of Blair and Brown. And then the Tories have been back since 2010, which is a long time ago. That's 14 years ago. So they've won 4 elections, 4 generals. It would be difficult, not impossible, but difficult for them to win 5 in a row simply because of the exhaustion of a long political cycle and the fact that they've had high turnover in their prime ministers in the last 3 years. So, but what about the USA? I haven't put the USA in either one of those categories because it's a bit of a strange animal. It's unusual because the fatigue and disappointment and disapproval of the incumbent is also present, but there's also a high level of disapproval of the challenger as well. So it's a kind of an unusual case in the sense that President Biden has the disapproval of roughly 55% of the electorate in current polls. And coincidentally, former President Trump is disapproved by 55% of the electorate in the current polls. So in other words, the perversity of American politics is that you have 2 candidates who are widely disavowed by the population who are going to be nominated by their parties. All incumbent presidents are renominated. There's no case of